Morning. Welcome to Light in the Darkness. Light in the Darkness. The Word of God says in Psalm number 119, verse 130, at the opening of God's Word, light comes forth, and He gives understanding to the simple. Here at Light in the Darkness, we like to touch up on subjects that we know that are pertinent to people based on what's happening in society and what they are going through. And we try to shine some light on it so that they don't have to go through it without an understanding of what it is, how to respond to it, and how to work through it. Because we recognize that there's no challenge in life that you cannot come through when you know how to come through it.
Amen.
So my name is Scott.
And my name is Jennifer. And thank you for tuning in to our podcast again. On this podcast, Scott, we're going to be talking about four more of the grief process. So the first four that we went over in our last podcast was 1 through 5, and it talks about the shock and denial, pain, fear, and anger.
Yeah.
So we're going to give you a brief definition of what grief is all about.
Yeah, because most people think of grief, again, as, of course, a loss associated with the death of a loved one. And that is a grief process. We more refer to that as bereavement. But grief is your body's not only mental, but your body's mental, emotional, physical, and even spiritual response to a loss, whether that loss is real or whether it's perceived. So it's your response to it, and it carries a heavy load of emotions. So grief is more experienced in the emotional area, but we understand that our emotions are triggered by how we think. So our thoughts produce our emotions. So it's not only emotional, but the emotional comes from the psychological. So when we're responding to a loss of any kind, we can experience grief.
Okay, very good. So the first of the 8 that we're going to discuss again is the second phase, which is going to be depression. And we know depression can take you into an area. It can feel like you have a dark cloud lingering over you. And we want to help you recognize that, you know, what depression is, what it's all about, and how you can process through this depression. It can feel like this dark cloud that's lingering over you, and this is an analogy I'm going to use, a dark cloud that won't go away, and the sun is not shining through. So just imagine yourself if you were on a plane, an airplane, and you were and it was very cloudy and it was dark, and you was going up in the elevation of that plane. And as you go through those clouds, it's dark, but as you get through a certain level of that elevation, thousands of feet, you would see that the sun began to shine through. And this is how process of the depression can take place. You go through a period that seems like it's so dark, you feel the pains and the emotions of it, and eventually the sun shines through. So
that's good. Yeah, and you know, just to kind of add on to that, when you hear the word depression, well, the first part of the word depression is what? Depressed. Depressed. When you depress someone or something, you push it down. So depression is kind of like a weight. It's a heaviness that rests upon us. And when we feel that heaviness is not physical heaviness. It's an emotional heaviness. And because grief has several different emotions, you know, the combination of all of these emotions, and we talked about 4 of them in the last session when we talked about the shock and the pain and the anger and the fear, those emotions, when they begin to compound themselves on one another, and we are not processing them effectively, then what happens, we become overloaded, we become depressed. And you know, like in a car, when you're driving, you want to slow a car down, so what you do is you depress the brakes. If you want to speed it up, then you press on the accelerator. Well, grief is, when you get into grief, that process of depression is a way of what? It's designed to slow you down. And it slows you down because of what? Because at this point you are running more on emotions than on logic and reasoning. So you're not necessarily thinking clearly. So one of the things that we advise our clients is when you're going through a set of emotions and you get into that depressed stage, don't try to look to make any major decisions and choices, because at that point you're being driven by your feelings and emotions. And because we understand that feelings and emotions are not given to us to make decisions with, but they're to help us understand our thinking and our thought process, if I just act strictly on my feelings and emotions, I can make decisions and the choices that can be wrong, but I'm not realizing them at that point. So depression, that depression part of grief, is just trying to slow you down. And when you slow down, sometimes you don't feel like getting out of bed. Sometimes you don't like doing things. You know, sometimes your thoughts are just running and you just having a challenge. Well, when you're in that state of depression, when you recognize what it is and you recognize it's to slow you down, then you say, okay, I want to be methodical in what I'm going to do. So if I'm going to get up the next morning, plan your day specifically, and say if you're dealing with depression, because if you don't plan your day and activity, it can overcome you and have you in a position where you don't feel like doing anything. So it doesn't mean you can't do anything. It's designed to do what? Again, to slow you down. And like Jennifer was saying, you in this cloud, you're in this darkness, and you said, man, I don't know where I'm at right now. I can't tell where I'm going. That's why you're being slowed down. So you slow down, and kind of like if you're driving in a fog, you turn on your fog lights and you're driving real slow because you're saying, I don't know what's ahead of me because I can only see so many hundred feet, when normally I could see 2 or 3 miles in front of me. Well, depression is saying, what? I'm in a dark place. I can't see what's ahead of me, so I need to slow down so I can react if I see something. So when you're feeling depression, you're feeling this weight, this heaviness, you know, it can be compounded with sadness and fear and all of the other emotions. Slow down, but take control of your thoughts. Plan your day. I'm going to get up in the morning and plan what you're going to eat for breakfast. Plan what you're going to put on to wear to work, or if you're going to go to work. Plan your activity, and then you may want to process them and talk over with somebody, but you want to take specific action in planning your day, because you don't want to do anything grandiose that's going to get you in trouble and you end up doing something that you would not have done in the first place.
Exactly. And that is so important, that you continue your activities as you would have before this incident happened. You want to continue to build your strength. You know, some people go through this process of depression in a way that they, you know, feel as they go through it. But you want to also keep in mind to have someone around you, have a friend, even if they don't say anything, that they are there with you to comfort you and to support you through this process. You know, if you have someone that's with you that understand what you're going through, they don't have to say a word. You can just let them know that I just need somebody here in my presence. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to say anything, but we can just be here and just to show the support that, you know, is needed of you. So, you know, like you were saying, Scott, you know, going through this motion, you know, a lot of people can go through it quickly in this phase of depression, and some people go through it in a slow drift. They gradually get themselves back together, and that is a normal, you know, process that, you know, we all experience when we go through a state of depression. You know, it's normal. It's not, you know, it becomes unnormal when it's prolonged for a very, very, very long time, you know, and you don't recognize that you have isolated yourself, you have shut everybody out, and you have gotten to the place to where you don't want to be bothered with anybody, and you have these thoughts that begin to surface that are really detrimental to your well-being. And the thoughts could be suicidal, you know, harmful to yourself, you know, doing harm, or either thinking of, you know, not ever coming out of it and just isolating yourself forever against people or whatever. But, you know, Some people can come out of it quickly to where, you know, they go on with their daily living. They go ahead and work through the process. They go ahead and, you know, allow the people to come in and to be there to be supportive to them. And they get through that process quickly. So we want you to, you know, just like Scott was saying earlier, to think about your thoughts. Okay, and not allow your thoughts to take you into a place that where you refuse to allow yourself to come out of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And let me add this real quick, because Proverbs 12 and verse 25 says, anxiety in the heart of man causes depression. Again, anxiety. And anxieties are those distractions. It's those thoughts that's just going back and forth through your head and you not really thinking clearly. You have maybe 10, 12 different thoughts. Well, I need to go do this, I need to do that. And so it says anxiety are those distracting thoughts, those overwhelming thoughts in your head is what causes depression or the lowness that we are talking about. But the next part of that verse says, but a good word makes the heart glad. So when you're going through a depression, you know, you can read something that's inspirational. You can listen to inspirational music. You can listen to a message or something that's going to give you a word that's good. Because a good word is kind of like an antidepressant. Because a lot of times when we're depressed, we can go to medical doctors or psychologists, or, psychiatrists, and they will prescribe to us an antidepressant, which was, the anti means against depression, which is designed to lift you up. But a lot of times people don't want to take medication because they can become habit forming or they have side effects. Now, if you're on your medication, we're not telling you to come off of that. That's not our responsibility. That's your doctor's. But what we are saying is oftentimes what we need more than anything is a good word, an encouraging word, an exhorting word, something to build you up. And so oftentimes you can call a friend or someone that you know that's encouraging, and they can share with you something that will help you come out of that depression with a good word, which becomes that antidepressant for you.
Yes, that antidepressant is that good word. I like that. You know, and everything that we need is in God's word.
Yeah,
right?
It is.
That helps us, you know, to build us up and to lift us. So we talked about the depression part. Now we're going to go into the acceptance, the total acceptance, where reality is I no longer have the benefits.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. What does that mean?
Because, you know, we've said at the onset that grief is your body's response to a loss. That loss can be anything. So we don't want to limit it only on death. I mean, people go through grief when they have a divorce. A divorce is a loss. It's a disconnection. So the word death actually means to be separated from, or to be disconnected from. We experience grief, whether we realize it or not, in early childhood. Because some point in your early childhood development, you have a primary caregiver that is not going to be there for you the way they were when you were a little infant baby. And that disconnection, a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists, they call it what we call separation anxiety. In other words, I feel anxiety because my mom or the primary caregiver that's there for me has to go back to work and they drop me off at a daycare. Or they get sick and they have to go into the hospital. Or they're sick at home and can't care for you. Or they don't respond to you the way you need them to do. Well, see, but that disconnection causes what? That's a loss. And so when we look at going through the shock and then the pain and then the fear and the anger and the depression, when we process those emotions properly, what we want to identify is, and here's the key, what did I lose when I lost this thing? And we kind of talked about that last time. So if I lost my automobile, what did I lose? I lost the means of transportation. If my home was repossessed, I lost a place to stay. So you look at what you lost. You may have lost companionship, and then you say, what did that companionship provide for me? But when I finally realize everything, and I come to the realization in this stage of grief that we're talking about now is called what? Total acceptance. I say, I accept the fact that what? I don't have the benefits of the car because it was repossessed. I don't have the benefits of the home I lived in because it was foreclosed on and taken away. I don't have the benefit of my friend who I could talk to all the time. They moved into another city or another country, and I can't talk to them. But any loss that we have in life, any loss that we have in life, God is faithful, and he will always provide whatever you lost, no matter what it is. And so when you get to the point where you know what you lost and you can go to God and share with him what you lost, God will supply that need, and then you can totally accept the reality that I don't have the benefit of what I lost, but it doesn't leave me without. So acceptance is the next stage, which says I have to accept the fact I don't have a car. So if I don't have a car, I still need transportation.
Okay, and I want to add to that because, you know, like you said, in the transportation, the loss of a loved one, and when they move in, this too I want to add it, when you move out an area, say for instance a husband has to accept a job and the wife and all of the family has to move, okay? So when the husband accepts the job, he has, you know, better income so that they can have a better life and everything. The wife has to go along with her. So she have to quit her job. She have to relocate and find new friends and all of that stuff. So when they get to the new place, in that, you know, area, that is a loss too, because she had to leave. The wife himself experiencing a loss, and she get to the place to where now all the things that they used to have, okay, they had all the friends, the financial gain, the you know, the social, you know, with the friends and all of that, and then having to move out of an area into a new area, and have to readjust to something that, you know, they said. Now she have to accept the fact that now I'm in this new place. So what I'm gonna do? What I'm gonna do? What I'm gonna do while I'm here? I lost all of my friends. This is a totally new state that I'm in. I lost, you know, had to, you know, get away from my job or quit my job. Now I lost that source of income. Those things can become a loss. But when you accept the fact that, hey, yes, my husband had to move to make it better for us. My husband had to, you know, we following, you know, his lead and his covering over us. So now I have to accept the fact that now I have to find a new job. Sometimes that can be a challenge in, you know, thinking about, hey, I lost in that area, but I have to refocus and build upon what I can do at that moment. Because sometimes, like you said, in childhood, we may have not gained those experience of how to readjust ourselves, how to readjust being in a new state, in a new area where you don't know nobody, and readjust. So acceptance has to come first and say, hey, I have to accept this, and to build myself up in the area to where I have to search for resources that can help me in that area. And that can be a challenge, you know, for that loss. But regaining that by going through the acceptance process to help yourself get to that place to where, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to step out.
And you just have to tell yourself the truth. Hey, yes, I don't have the benefit. I don't have the benefit of what I lost. Most people don't want to come to that conclusion because they keep saying, well, I just don't want to just move on. But if you don't move on, you're going to get stuck. And so acceptance enables us to get unstuck out of the depression, the fear, the anger, and the pain by saying, you know what, I lost my phone. I lost my mobile phone. Guess what? I just have to get another one. And that takes us into the next stage is what, when I accept the loss, I don't have a car, but I lost transportation, I may have to make an adjustment and do what? Find another method of providing for what I lost. So if I lost my car, I say I lost transportation. You say, well, hey, I can walk. I can ride on a transit system. I can buy a new car. I can carpool. I can get a bicycle. I can get an Uber. There are many ways of adjusting, but if I don't accept it, I can sit there all day moaning and grieving. I don't have a car anymore, and what am I going to do? The goal is what? Accept, and then what? I have to make an adjustment. Many of people will accept the loss, but they never adjust and said, I have to come up with another method, a means of getting what I didn't have, what I lost, another way.
And adjustment is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're saying, that is huge. We have to make that adjustment, because if we don't, we can stay stuck.
Mm-hmm.
We can stay stuck in a place that, you know, we don't want to be, and then don't know how to get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
That adjustment, like you said, keeps us moving.
Yeah.
It says, okay, now I can move on a little bit farther than I have moved before.
Right.
You're not standing still. You know, like you're in an automobile. If you're sitting at the traffic light and the light never change and turned on
Like
green,
yesterday.
yes, turn to green, you will be stuck sitting there not moving. So when that light change and when you figure out, hey, yes, this is an adjustment that I can make. I can make in this adjustment. The light is on green, so let's move.
Yeah.
Let's move.
Yeah.
Let's move.
And so remember, in the adjustment stage, what you are doing is the thing that you were created to be, taking back control of your life.
Yes.
See, when you have a loss, what happens is your emotions will hijack you. Your emotions will hijack you and try to get you to act based on how you are feeling. And so when we get to the adjustment stage, we said, I'm taking back control of my life. God created us to be in control. He created us to be rulers and leaders and managers. We're supposed to be able to control every situation and every circumstance in our lives. But when we allow our emotions to rule us, we are out of control, because our emotions are normally, and here's a word, triggered by an experience outside of ourselves. So I hear about this. I got laid off on my job. I hear that I have to relocate, as Jennifer was saying. Or I hear about something and it triggers in me thoughts. But those thoughts produce those emotions. And I say, okay, now what am I do? I got to move to another school, man. I enjoyed this school. I've been at this school all this time and I have to move this from the school. Yes. But when you make the adjustment, you're saying, I'm taking control of my emotions. Now, how do we take control of our emotions? By taking control of our thoughts. As a man thinks in his heart, Proverbs 23:7, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So when you begin to think right, hey, I did lose this, but what I can take control and get this another way. I'm taking control of my life. Now I'm making decisions. And when I start making those decisions and start thinking differently, my different way of thinking is going to produce what emotions that are associated with my new way of thinking, and I'm going to begin to feel better. So that good word can even come from you that gets you out of that level of depression. You can say, hey, I don't have a car. You know what? I did have to relocate, but I'll find a job out there. I'm skilled. I'm talented. I can apply out there even before I go out to that area. And when you make the adjustment and you accept it, and you take control of your life, then you are walking in dominion and authority. Because remember, control comes from the inside.
Yes, totally on the inside.
Yeah.
And it's important because as you say, as you was talking, that self-talk.
Mm-hmm.
We teach our clients and stuff, do self-talk. Talk and tell yourself the truth,
Yeah.
like you're saying.
Yeah.
That process and that step in adjustment is very important, that you talk to yourself and remember those things that you lost. Even if it's your car, the material things,
Mm-hmm.
the loved ones that you lost, you can't replace those, but those individuals, but you can learn to move on.
Yeah.
And accept the fact and adjust in that area that, hey, I'm going to move on, because if they were still here, they would want me to continue to live my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we adjust and we move forward and live the life that they would like for us to see, to be happy, to be prosperous, and to be joyous.
Mm-hmm.
While they were here, you do the same thing as they, while they're not here. So that adjustment is very important. So the next and final stage, and all of these stages, can be in different, orders. It don't have to come. Some of the stages you may not even go through all of the stages.
Right.
So living again.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that part.
Living again, giving unconditionally.
Yeah.
and sacrificially
Yeah.
in the life of others.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we can live again.
Right. Yeah, we can live again, and that's the ultimate goal of God, our Creator, when we experience a loss. Because 2 Corinthians chapter 1, and around verse 2 or 3, it says, God comforts us in all of our troubles, so that we can comfort others in any trouble with the comfort that we ourselves had received from God. So when God comforts you and bring you out of shock and take you into the pain, and then you go in through the fear, and you go through the anger and the depression, and you accept and you make the adjustment. He said, once you adjust, the proof that you've adjusted is now you said, what? I'm going to impart and impact somebody else's life, because that was a deposit that's made in me. That was something that I learned from going through this experience. Your experiences that you go through and that God brings you through, no matter how painful they are, once you come through them, then you said, I have a pattern that I can help somebody else go through. Because then we can relate to someone when they come to us and say, hey, I just lost this. And you said, hey, you know what? I don't know how you feel specifically, but I know how I felt when I had a loss. And then you can help them identify with these 8 stages where they are in the process and what they need to do to come through it. And you will know it worked because of what? Because you said, hey, God brought me through it. He gave me a good word. He encouraged me, and I learned to talk to myself. And so the last stage of living again is giving, is what? I'm going to give into somebody else, because when we give, we are functioning like God, because God is the great giver. The Bible says God so loved the world that he gave, and when he gave his best. So when we talk about sacrificial giving, we say it's going to cost me something to take myself out of my comfort and go help somebody else that's dealing with something. But that's the reason why God brought you through it in the very first place.
I love that. And that scripture is my favorite, one of my favorite scriptures. That, when God, like you said, when he brings us out, he wants us to share how he brought us out, how it made us feel at that time. We are saying that, when you're in that, feel the emotions.
Yeah.
But process through them and not stay stagnant to the place to where you can't move forward. Life, you can live again. You can begin again. You can get over all of the things and the challenge that you encounter, so that when you do get through those things, you have something to share with others that you see that is struggling through the same process. The same situation. And all situations are not the same. Everybody experiences them differently,
right,
and they affect each individual differently.
Yeah.
But how you came out of it may not be the same as how the other person come out. But your testimony, your good news, give them hope that you can live again.
Yeah.
So we just want to thank you guys for just tuning in. Hopefully that you can take away from this process something that can apply to you, and that you can share with others. If you would like, share this podcast with someone that is going through the stages of grief, that will, and anything in these podcasts can help them get through the process. Share, subscribe to our podcast, and we will see you in the future real soon. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.